that kind of thing. And then, if you look at how young people are demonised in the press now, I mean, obviously we proved them wrong in 2003, but now, it's completely different. The media talk about how the young are far too political, they need to be kettled, they need to be beaten off the street, they need to be imprisoned, and they need to stop meddling. So I think that's really, really important that, the movements over the last few years have given people the confidence to come out onto the streets and argue politically against this government. And I think, if you look at AD's graphs, like a lot of the times when you see people's confidence, mistrust in the mainstream institutions growing, has happened after some of the mass demonstrations on the street. So I think that's been incredibly important. And I want to talk about why politics is so important to organisations like the Coalition of Resistance, which I think have really helped people to see by putting the argument out there, not just that we don't want to cut this or we don't want to cut that, but there is no justification for any cuts at all. And I think it's extremely important to have an organisation that's putting that political line, partly because that's where people feel confident in arguing, but also partly because that's the way we're being divided up at the moment. You look at the speeches that Ed Miliband has made recently, and the way that he has, he has attacked what the bankers have been doing, but he's compared it with what he said the people are doing at the bottom of society. And he talked about benefit fraud and the rioting. And I think to compare those two people, to compare the people that have put us in this crisis with some of the most vulnerable people in society is absolutely disgusting. It requires a political response to challenge it. And I think it really goes back to that whole rhetoric about the deserving and undeserving poor, which is something that we need to absolutely resist. And just an example to point out the importance of unity in the struggle. I just want to briefly mention the protests of the electricians, the Sparks, that recently won such a wonderful victory. And those protests were electric to be on, and they were electric because of the spirit of unity. But anyway, the reason they weren't electric was because of that kind of unity. And there was none of the stuff, there were protests around the country a few years before where the slogan "British jobs for British workers" had been raised, which I think was extremely divisive. That did not rear its head this time. This time, unity in the struggle was absolutely fundamental to those protests, and I think that's why they won such an astounding victory, because they refused to be divided. They put politics at the heart of the argument.